What's it for?
It's a
Podcast.
podcast.
Oh, what podcast? YouTube?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
You mentioned you've met Imran, you met Ali Dawah. Are they like the kind of funny characters we see on screen, like very controversial, or there's more like beneath the surface when you scratch?
Absolutely. Yo, when I look at fashion, I look at things that happen in Fashion Week. Like, I don't want to go to these parties. I was at Speaker's Corner. There was a friend. Yo, you should go to Hassan Hajjal's shop. One day, I just took my stuff. I went to Hassan Hajjal's shop. It was like, yo, yes, I love this. Make me 2 of them. In the mosque, there's this one brother. He was from Somalia, and I tell him about the possibility of me getting married, and he tells me, yo, Somalis are super racist. He's Somali himself, right?
Dawood is a designer and the founder of MEEZAN, a streetwear brand with meaning. He uses his extensive knowledge of the arts, Eastern and Western philosophy, and Islam as his inspiration. Originally from Germany, he moved to the UK and joined the Dawah scene before making it in the fashion industry. He helped me a lot with my own journey with Islam. I value his opinion and I admire his dedication and persistence at reverse engineering a system he was never meant to get in. Thank you very much for coming, and as always, it's always a pleasure sharing our conversations. And the first question I would like to ask you, obviously, is what's your journey to the faith?
Yeah. Hi, assalamu alaikum, shalom to everyone who's watching. I'm very happy to be here. We've talked about this for a very long time, and I'm so grateful that it came into fruition. I grew up in Germany. I've been in the UK since 2008, so I've been in the UK for a very long time. But before that, I was living in Germany, and Germany has a very high population on Turkish immigrants. I remember talking to a friend of mine called Cengiz, and he's Turkish. So he was talking to me about the prophets from the perspective of the Quran. And I was very oblivious to that. I didn't know anything, not too much about it. And when he started mentioning all the prophets, I was so gobsmacked that I was like, whoa, we share kind of the same prophets, We believe like the same people that you're mentioning, we also have in our books. And then 2 years after, when I was 16, I was spending a lot of time with my friend Fatih. And one time he must have gone to a kebab shop. At the kebab shop, the guy, he knew kind of who I was because we would go there every single time to have a kebab. But this time I was wearing a tasbih around my neck, and it was like a fashion statement, So I was totally oblivious to what it was. And then the kebab guy looks at me, and his eyes like just lit up, and he's like, "Are you Muslim?" And the way he looked at me, I felt so bad to say no, because I didn't want to disappoint him. So I said, "Yeah, I am," and I wasn't. And that was the beginning. And I walked similarly, like today, to a park with my friend Fatih. And he looks at me and says, why are you not a Muslim then? I was like, well, what do I have to say? What do I have to do? And he says, like, say the Shahada. And I said the Shahada. I didn't know anything. I was totally oblivious to it. And then in hindsight, because I used to live in like a medium-sized city, so news spread quite quickly. And then, the rest is history. So then I had very early on a friend of mine called Björn, who was, or Hassan, some call him Hassan, who was like sort of a mentor. He was like 10 years older than me. He had been in the deen a bit longer than I, and he heard, and he kind of took me under his wing. And then he started talking to me about Islam, and I was like, wow, this religion has the answer to everything. Like, I've stumbled upon like this incredible tradition. I remember seeing my friend Fatih Gattab. This is another Fatih, Algerian brother. He was 14 years old, 15 years old, and we would fast. We'd be out. It was a very hot summer day, and he would like insist in fasting. I was like, your parents can't see you. Surely you can eat something. And he was so dedicated, And I think these things were very, very attractive, for someone who kind of had religion, but like religion kind of faded away. Catholic background was kind of fading away as a teenager. When you live in the West, like religion becomes less and less important for you for the majority of the times. However, the Muslims, they were very, very adamant and keeping certain principles, and I found that very admirable.
And then you mentioned that a year after that you moved to the UK.
Yeah, the reason why I moved to the UK was because I was a bit misbehaved. And my dad wanted to change the environment for me so that, you know, I could like broaden my horizon. I moved in with my cousin, my late cousin, who's passed away now. And so I moved into his house, and it's crazy. This is sort of like Ramadan 2008. This is just before me coming to the UK. And I sort of like, it was kind of like very difficult because most of the family members had kind of caught wind of why I was moving, and most of them were like, I'm sorry, we can't take that responsibility. You know, testosterone, young guy here, he's just gonna cause problems. And then obviously, I was like, Ya Allah, this was like one of my not first ever du'as, but like a du'a where I was like, it had an impact on my life. So I was like, Ya Allah, and this is after Ramadan, this was like one day before Eid. Ya Allah, please, please, please allow me to go to the UK, because all the schools that I was applying to, like no one was like accepting me either, all the colleges. I was like, Ya Allah, please, please, please allow me to go to the UK, and I will dedicate my life to you. And the first day I come to the UK, my cousin picks myself, my dad, from the bus station in Victoria. There's this one guy, this random guy, like immigrant guy, probably fresh off the boat sort of type of situation, yeah? His name was Idris. And he came with us, and my cousin, because my cousin was waiting for us, he was already with him, so we thought it's like a friend of his. He's like, no, I just like, he was here, and he looked miskin, so I wanted to help him. So my cousin took him in, and in the car, whilst he's in the car, I start talking to him, and he's speaking French. I think he was from the I don't know where he was, Burkina Faso maybe. And he was in France before. So I start speaking to him, and I'm like, yeah, your name is Idris. Oh yeah, you're Muslim. So I'm Muslim too. And I see my cousin looking through the mirror. He looks back. He looks at me, and then he's like, what? Kind of thing. And I didn't know anything, right? So we get home, and like Idris sort of becomes my support system without me even knowing, because I find out that my cousin was very misinformed in Islam. You know, he was very misinformed in Islam, because remember, this is back in 2008. So this is like 3 years removed from the 05 bombings. So he had a very screwed perspective on Islam. And so he was very kind of hostile towards me, you know, when he found out. But like, having Idris there for like a month or so gave me respite. So my cousin couldn't really say much. He was like, and then when he left, then he kind of was very open about it. He's like, I didn't know you were Muslim. If I knew you were Muslim, I wouldn't have like allowed you to come here. And like, you can't really do all of these things. You can't practice. You don't know what you're doing. And I don't fault him, you know. That these were like, so that's the time, the period that we're in. College comes in 2010. I start college. I meet loads of people, and I'm not yet very attached to a Muslim community. That comes a bit later. By now, I've moved out of my cousin's house, and then 2011 or like late 2010, these because I was living in a shared accommodation, these university students move in, like English university students, and they were like year one university, so it was about drugs and alcohol, and unfortunately I fell back into that lifestyle again, like some heavy drugs I've never done before, drinking, which was very weird. And I think it was a bit of like a residue of like my previous life. You know, it hadn't really gone away. You know, considering that I started smoking weed the same time I became a Muslim, which is kind of weird. So fast forward, I realized, hey, this is not what I came here for. Like, I have to honor my words, you know. Like, this is, if I continue this way, like something bad is gonna happen. So 2011 summer, and what I would do every summer, I would go back to Germany every summer. So that was a good way for me to like break off from like that company, and then that's really when I start taking like the religion very serious.
What was your first shock when you came to the UK? How did that happen?
So fast forward from 2008 to 2011, that's really when I'm starting to like get accustomed with the Muslim community in the UK. And I think the first ever shock, and I've never thought about this until you asked me, was I think that Ramadan in 2011, when I was by myself, like I saw brothers and we were all praying together, and everyone's like, yo, you guys, yeah, mashallah, yeah, I'm gonna leave now, yeah. And I'm like, wow, where am I gonna go? Like I was living with a friend of mine, and then like another housemate. This is now me moved out, not living with these university students any longer, but none of them too were Muslims, so it was just me. It was quite painful. Then I meet, or the sister, proposes like the idea of me marrying her. Then in Kingston, in a mosque, there's this one brother, he was from Somalia, and I tell him about the possibility of me getting married, and he tells me, yo, Somalis are super racist. He's Somali himself, right? And I wasn't aware. So what do you mean? We're all Muslims. What do you mean? Nah, man, like, we don't marry out, I don't think that's going to happen, like, trust me. And I was like, nah. So, I'm like, in disbelief. And fast forward a couple of years, like a year in, I realized that he was speaking the truth, The girl tells me, oh, I don't know, she was very secretive, she was lying to me, blah, 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 blah. And sort of like just keeping me on a leash. That was very painful, and then I realized, I speak to her mother, and then she kind of confirms everything that brother was saying. And she was like, I really like you as a person, but like none of my family members have married out, and I don't think that is going to happen with my daughter either. And this is the first time I'm getting shocks now. I'm like, yo, this is what Muslims are all about. So I thought, like, as a Muslim, and remember, because I only had like very good experiences prior to that experience. And then I meet a very good friend of mine, Dawah, man, Imran. So we start to pursue this religion thing a bit more. And remember, this is like, I had kind of divorced, because I went through this process of where I had divorced all my previous life, because I attached what music, art, fashion, all that stuff, I attached it to like me doing drugs and me going to clubs and stuff like that. And I didn't want anything to do with it. So I stopped doing that for like a very long time. And then as it goes in the West, if you're around certain people, the first entry point is Salafiyah. I was never like a hardcore Salafi, and I was never convinced, but I was kind of like, yeah, these principles make sense, like going back to the Sunnah, that was a good training for me. It was needed to be where I am today. And I start to meet all these different Muslims now. So Hizb ut-Tahrir, I get invited to that. I'm like, nah, I'm not. I don't like this. This is weird. What was good about the Salafi thing was that you had to be a particular Salafi in order to be accepted by the rest of the Salafis. So because we never really fitted the bill, me and Imran and others, so because of that, we were kind of like always not really in there, right? And yeah, and this is where the pain starts. I'm kind of divorcing myself. I'm kind of like changing as a person.
So even the Salafis, they didn't accept you?
No, they never did, because we were giving dawah. That was like their main issue. It was like some Salafis in Hamdlo, and they're like, you guys are ignorant. Why are you on the streets talking to people about Islam? You're supposed to go and learn. Maybe they were right. They were right to an extent, but I mean, come on. Like if there's something that I can convey, then I will convey it. So we weren't Salafi enough. So that's where the pain kind of starts. Now I'm starting to see all the Muslims who are a bit like, if you're not like me, then you can't sit with me. I'm starting to see like difficulties in marriage, not being rejected all the time. Like, I don't know, oh, your parents don't live here, blah blah. But the reality was, I was not one of them. That's really what it was. There was like domestic situations. I'd go to the mosque, for example, I say salam, no one responds, things like that, and then I meet Imran, and I'm with Imran, I live with Imran for 2 years, so that was a very, very beautiful experience. I was kind of sheltered from a lot of this stuff, but every now and then, if we would go to places, you'll see, the way to treat him, the way to treat me, that type of stuff. And then I just realized that I love this religion, I want to study more, I want to be knowledgeable as much as I can. But like this Salafi thing isn't perhaps exactly the right way. But at that point, I hadn't thought about it, because I got married now.
How would you explain the differences between what you've experienced and lived in Germany and what you've experienced in the UK, because that's crazy. We have almost like a similar experience in France. For me, it was wonderful. People were just like this, regardless of your skin color, your culture. You could get jobs or like make friends just because of your faith. You share the same faith. How do you explain what's happening in the UK?
So like I think the stark differences that I experienced in the UK was that it was a UK problem. Like not necessarily like a UK Muslim problem, it was a UK problem. Because I realized that, for example, in Germany, people are just so down to earth. That's what I like so much about Germany. Like that's like less pretense. Like when people don't like you, they're just going to tell you. And if they love you, they will make sure to show you that they love you.
Same in France.
Yeah. And I really like that. And this is why I say it's a UK problem. So you go to like, and I've experienced this at work. So you see this girl, she'll be like, "Hi darling, you're right, da, 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 da." And then like, you leave someone leaves the room, and then I start seeing them talking bad about that person. I'm like, that's two-faced. Like, and then when I was with the Muslims, I was like, Akhi, I love you. But then when it really comes down to it, you're not behind me or what I do. You don't support me, like, because I'm a person. Anyone who knows me, I'm a very, very supportive person. Like, I could like take 2 hours out of my day and just trying to like motivate the person, or if you need help with anything, and if I have the ability to help you, I will. Because that's just like that's standard. Like that's what comes with friendship. That's what comes with brotherhood. And I was confused because people are nice on the like surface, but like there's no substance to that niceness.
So how is it, just out of curiosity, you mentioned you've met Imran, you met Ali Dawah, who are like big personalities, very popular here in the UK. Like, how is it meeting them in real life? Is it like, are they like the kind of funny characters we see on screen, like very controversial, or are they like there's more like beneath the surface when you scratch?
Absolutely. They're just like, it's so. And sometimes people meet me, and they spend some time with me, and they're like, "How can you be friends with Ali? How does that work? It doesn't make sense. You're like this way, and then they're that way, right? How does that make sense?" Well, there's two answers to this. One, when I met them, I wasn't this way. So you're meeting kind of a different person. And two, there's more to them than what you can see, what the eye meets. And I would say very similar. They're very similar to an extent and very different. Like Ali, for example, super kind-hearted person. He will give like his last shirt of his back. He's helped me so much. Very loving person. Very emotional person. He really cares about his people. That's what I like so much about him, and his passion for the religion as well. It's just beautiful. Like that, to know that most of the things he does is because he actually cares about people. That's crazy. And I would say the same thing about Imran. Imran is a genius. The guy is a marketing genius. Like the stuff that he was doing back in 2014, 2013, 2012, it's unheard of. I've never seen anyone after that do things the way he would do things. He had such a sharp understanding of social media, like very early on. Like I remember, like, and I hope he doesn't mind. This might actually help him with his Badr Club. Does he still do Badr Club?
No, I think he changed the name.
Oh yeah, but you did a video. You did the video about it. Sorry, conflict of interest. But yeah, this is for you to know. This is back in 2013 or even 12 something. He made £10,000 in one day because he was selling a course. He had this very popular course called How to Smash Your Exams. It's just sick. I was helping him, moderating and stuff. Like he did a photo shoot. He hired a photographer. He paid her for it. He made a promotional video. He put an ad out on Facebook, and then by the end of the day, when the day came for the course to start, and he was teaching people and it was all legitimate. And by the end of it, he had £10,000. I was like, wow, how did you? So I've learned so much. Like a lot of the stuff that I do, I've learned from him. You know what he used to say to me? He say like, by next year, I want to be the Muslim on MTV. Like, this sounds so crazy to some people, right? But he would say stuff like that. And I understood what he meant by that. He was saying that he wanted to bring Islam to the mainstream and make people understand how cool Islam is and how relatable Islam is. Because one of the reasons why he was so successful at the beginning was because he was so relatable. You know, he was that one cool guy that, you know, next door guy or the kid from college that you knew about, and, you know, you could relate to him. And he was being, I believe he was being himself. You know, it was no act in there, you know. And that made him so successful. And he's lost that a bit, you know. He's followed the tradition that may sound good, you know, as in like, well, we do follow the early Muslims. But, you know, one thing that people don't tend to understand is that the early Muslims had to always live within their time. You know, they weren't looking back anywhere, right? They understood that there was wisdom and love and teaching with the earliest generations, but they still had to face contemporary issues in a very contemporary manner, you know. And the best example for that is the compilation of the Quran. You know, it wasn't compiled before, but like they understood, like, look, we have the printing press now, or we have paper now. We have all these technologies now. We have to act upon this and compile the Quran because, you know, to codify this, because the deen is now spreading, you know. They didn't go, and they were within the time. And you find this theme over and over again if you go throughout history, that those people were very, very heavily entrenched in the contemporary world. And I think that was happening with someone like Dawah, man, at one point. And then it just went into like this thing where he joined the ranks of a system that I believe has not helped anyone. You know, it hasn't helped. It hasn't furthered it, you know, not more, like, let's face this, people in that community haven't issued 30 books that I can go to now that will benefit people. Translations and work, and like I don't see that. Like predominantly what I see from that community is videos about other people. Don't listen to that person, this and that. And I'm not including Imran, because Imran, mashallah, he was doing other things as well. But I'm just saying, despite of him being still a bit more open-minded, he still kind of joins that system that I feel like keeps us stale and keeps us from like progressing on a spiritual level. I start to realize, well, that community I was part of, it's going to take them a very long time to understand what I'm trying to do. I've realized that very, very early on.
Why so?
Because even when I used to like be in a Dawah, do Dawah things with them, there was a period of like creativity. Like it was like the golden era of like Dawah on YouTube. And this was like, and it kind of ends, like it starts at 2011 and it ends 2014. So this is like me, Dawah, man, and like doing very creative stuff. So there's like, for example, this video which we did like a storyboard on. Like even the idea of having a storyboard for a Dawah video, that was kind of new, because I was very interested in filmmaking back then. And we did like a storyboard on like this very famous video of his, which is called Rap God. It was like challenging Eminem, because he came up with this song called Rap God, and we challenged Eminem on Surat Falak. We cut out clips from 8 Mile, and then he happened to live in an area that was kind of similar. So, and there's like this one scene where Eminem comes out of like a building from a rap, and there's people like on the other side of the road, like kind of calling him, yo, come here, and we cut ourselves in there, and they're like, yo, come, and then like, so it was about an enactment that was kind of new, you know, that didn't exist before ever, you know, especially in the context of like religion, and it got loads of views and stuff, and so that was cool. But like when then they start to go down a bit more the path of like just the Salafi thing, I just saw very quickly that I would not have a place there, because my creativity wouldn't have been, you know, valued or accepted. Because even when we did Rap God, loads of people came out like cussing Imran. You know, Imran, he used to get a lot of negative responses. So I kind of like admire him that he's been in the game for such a long time, even though he had like his own journey and changing. But I rate him a lot because, boy, that the amount of like hate mails, message he would get, he would cry in front of me, you know. And he's a genius. He's like such a genius, like, mashallah, may Allah bless him. But so we did that stuff, and then from there I realized I can do this, and I can use my art. I was like, I'm not going to depend on nobody. I'm not going to like depend on people pushing my idea. I'm going to go down this path, and I'm going to do this very high art vision. But I told them, look, I'm going to have to focus on my family now. I'm going to focus on my business, and this is really where it starts, my journey. And then like the first couple of years into my business, into my marriage, I kind of feel disfranchised because I'm trying to do the whole fashion thing. I'm trying to do it like in the most conservative way, and it works for the few years. But like, I'm starting to realize that I will never get that community behind me, because it doesn't matter what I do, at the levels that I want to do it conceptually. This is a time period where Muslims were still printing like Islamic, like salam or peace or on the t-shirts, you know, and have like caps and stuff with like Mickey Mouse hands and stuff like this time. And I'm like kind of like, I want to make clothes because I'm Congolese, so like that's our background, that's what we do.
Tell me about the journey of setting up your business and your brand.
So this is back 2014. I was at the same time doing a business with another friend. That was kind of like where my money was coming from, and I was taking that money to invest into the fashion brand. Again, I naturally I was, you know, talking and selling to people around me, more Muslims, but then again, it was a novelty and it was cool at the beginning, but then you fast forward and you want to be a bit more complex with the products and the things that you want to do, and then people kind of like just fell off, you know. No one was really supportive. So I realized, when I look at fashion, I look at things that happen in Fashion Week, you know, but I don't want to be at Fashion Week. Like, I don't want to go to these parties. I can't. I will have to need like a community around this again, because who am I going to sell to? Who am I going to speak to? Who am I going to show my art to? And then slowly I start to like keep up with like the scene in London. But I was keeping up with the scene in London from far, so I was never there, but I always knew what would happen. And I would sometimes pick particular events I would go to. I think it really starts off this journey of like building a community around me. Really starts off when I go to Hassan Hajjaj. As a Moroccan photographer, OG, shout out to Hassan Hajjaj. So I was at Speaker's Corner. There was a friend, like a Moroccan brother. He was like, I told him what I do, and he was like, yo, you should go to Hassan Hajjaj's shop. And I have heard of him already. I saw the shop as well. It's like, you should go there. He's like super cool. I can connect you with him. And I was waiting for him to connect me, and nothing happened. I was like, you know, I'm not going to wait on this guy. One day I just took my stuff. I went to Hassan Hajjaj's shop. I was sitting there for 6 hours. You know, he just welcomed me so much that I end up drinking tea, and then he had like this exhibition going on at Somerset House. So this is now, you see now how drastically things are changing. I was like, yeah, wow, beautiful, I would love to. So I go to Somerset House, and in Somerset House there was like an after show thing after his lecture, because he gave a lecture. And there I met Larry Ashampong, and he's sort of like been a long-term collaborator, and he's been like a fine artist. And he asked me eventually, or I approached him, I was like, hey, you know, I really love your performances. I have this, I could like design costumes for you. He was like, yo, yes, I love this, make me 2 of them. And everything changed all of a sudden. He was like, not only did he like what I was doing, he's like, make me another one. So I made him 2 of it. I delivered it at his studio, and he was like, oh, by the way, give me your bank details. I was like, what? I almost started crying. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I know you didn't expect this, but here, that's the money. He paid me, you know, and I was like, yo, this is strange, you know, like, so this was like my entry point into the art world, you know.
And from then, did you understand how the art world works?
Yeah, I understood it. And he would tell me a lot, you know, about how to move, especially as a black person in the art world. And yeah, so from there I realized, okay, let me go to more events, because it tends to happen if I go to events, that there are opportunities that come my way, you know. So I start to do that a bit more, and I've been doing that ever since. So this is sort of like, I identified a community. This is an already existing group. Let me bring value. So when I saw Larry and I loved what Larry was doing, I was like, well, let me help him, or let me suggest something to him, you know. And then that brought me my name, you know. And then I think this is back in 2017 perhaps, like we were in Whitechapel Gallery. Like my work was in Whitechapel Gallery back in 2017. There were 1,000 people that day who came to his performance. And that was crazy. I was like, okay, I think I know now what to do and how to do it. And the rest has been history ever since.
We all know, you know, lots of people who have brilliant ideas, who are extremely talented at what they're doing, whether it is, you know, in music, design, arts, or, you know, even feels like education, media, journalism. You've got people who have millions here, who give like millions on zakat. Instead, you know, of going abroad, I don't see any of these like millionaires supporting these kind of initiatives, which would, we know, propel the political representation, media visibility, and the cultural capital of the community as a whole. Why do you think it doesn't happen here in the UK?
Well, this goes back to the idea of like, with a lot of these people that you're talking about, these influential or like very rich individuals, because they just don't have the realization, they don't have the capacity, they don't have even a cultural capita to even realize such a reality. So they are very used to the idea of doing things that have been done for a very long time, and to do things in a very limited fashion, because they are second, third generation Muslims in this country that come from a very particular background. I think it would be slightly different in America. It's just that, you know, it's no vision, I would say. There's no vision and there's no appetite, because if I give 500k to someone, to an art collective, what am I getting out of it? You know, this idea of patronage, you know, being a patron, like, it doesn't exist. And just going back quickly to what I was saying about when I realized that I had to kind of forge my own way, is it kind of coincides with Kanye West. He was trying to get money for his company back then, and like, which is now worth billions, but back then he was struggling and he was trying to get money, and he was going to all these people and no one was hearing him out. I was like, oh my God, it even happens to him. And then he was given solutions, and he was given examples in history. He was talking about the Medici family. Like, the Medici family used to, like, they were funding the Renaissance. We in a Renaissance now. I need money. And I'm Michelangelo. I'm Walt Disney, you know? And this is what, you know, and I started studying as well at uni. But like, that put the lights on, and I was like, that's the problem. There aren't people that are wealthy enough, that have all the firing power to fund and to help these creative minds to change reality. And the reason why is because these people with the firing power don't understand the amount, or they don't understand how wealth or old money works, because they're all like kind of new money people. So like old money, they understand the idea of heritage, they understand the idea of patronage, because it looks good on them, you know. But these people don't understand that. It's just, I guess that's the problem, is that people usually donate to tangible things very like basic and simple, like prayer mats, or we're gonna teach, or we're gonna revert so and so many people, or like, it's just like, so their understanding is really, it kind of goes back to the understanding of what, like, the religion as well, because it's like their understanding is that Well, the highest thing that a person can do is prayer. If I'm helping someone to pray, then I've surely done a great thing, and you have, absolutely. But there's so many other things that are equally as important, and I think with the takeover that Andrew Tate really showed people that, yo, religion is bigger than just Aqidah, you know, it really is. There's way more to it, you know. And so someone like Andrew Tate was able to talk about different aspects of life, like masculinity and what it means to be a man, you know, when a very long time it wasn't a topic. Like, no one was discussing that amongst the Muslims. It was not realized, you see, and he was able to benefit from that heavily, especially amongst the Muslims. And this is what the point I'm trying to make is that, you see, if it's all good and it's beautiful, and may Allah bless those people who are concerned about the prayer. However, you just have to understand that everything else will be outsourced by other people. So your clothing will be outsourced, because I see some YouTubers, like Muslim YouTubers, they make videos against Kanye West. The same day I go to a mosque and I see the Kanye West shoes there. People need to understand that if we don't start to, and we are relatively well off, and we're relatively in a safe environment, like there's no war involved, you know, if we don't spend money on the arts and all these other things, then we will consume what is out there. And I think this is what the problem has been for a very long time. If the charity, for example, the charity industry is saturated, which it is, clearly is, you know how many charities that? Like, if it's saturated, then as a visionary, I would then say, well, this whole industry, this hungry artist here that could do incredible things for the well-being of Muslims, changing the perception that people have about Muslims.
Who are now your biggest supporters? Who is your audience?
My audience, I'd say my audience are artists themselves, as artists, fine artists, musicians, a lot of musicians, and they're like people who follow the musicians, so their audience. So I would say it's Gen Z, a lot of Gen Zs, a lot of millennials. I have and my brand is called MEEZAN, so it's a very mixed crowd of people. So usually when you come to my event, you'd have like someone who had summer classes in Azhar, and then you have like an underground rapper, and then you have like a fine artist who's shown at Freeze, you know, then you have like a gallery owner, you know, like it's and it's all in one room, you know. So it's like the creative crowd.
So would you say that now you have found a community of supportive people, a nurturing soil, while compared to before? Absolutely.
And I think so I had like a run, you know, so from 2017 2016 kind of like things are starting to, like, you know, this was like the first time I go into my website and I have like orders. And then 2021 I meet and it's shout out to Raza. He's 10 years younger than me, so he introduces me to his crowd. Now this is like, I had already built sort of like a crowd that was a bit my age, a bit older, so this is why my crowd is kind of mixed. So I meet him and he introduces me to this whole new world, you know. I start to go to these events with him. I start to meet all these like up and coming rappers, and that really like ignites my name, sort of like.
What would you say is the inspiration and the idea behind your brand? Because your name is MEEZAN,
yeah,
which means the balance, and your logo has like a scale on it.
Yeah.
So what's the idea behind the concept?
MEEZAN is I was inspired. This goes back to the very beginning of my journey. I naturally looked into Islam for inspiration. There was this surah Al-Araf, and it talked about clothing in a way I've never heard it before, you know. And I was like, yep, that's my that's the inspiration, you know. And the verse goes, Ya bani Adam, qad anzala alaykum, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Ya bani Adam, qad anzala alaykum flourish, right? So it talks about all children of Adam, we have sent down clothing to protect your nakedness or your shame, and to beautify you. And verily, this is a sign for those who think. You know, I was like, yo, this is me. You know, this is me. I was like, I want to like live according to this ayat as much as I can. And then when I start to look into the commentary, they were like the story of Araf, the heights, and this is basically the place, they believe theologically, where people on the day of judgment will end up because their deeds are on the MEEZAN. The deeds aren't like, they're balanced. They're not, so the bad does not, you know, outstrip the good, and the good does not outstrip the bad. And I was like, and this is where my logo kind of comes from, the bad and good. It's kind of balanced. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to be in that position, none of us to be in that position. But I found that very profound, because I was like, wow. So I look into this verse, and then it leads me to the MEEZAN. The MEEZAN is like the most important aspect of like what happens. And then I expand that idea. MEEZAN here meaning a device for value, you know, and obviously over the years the meaning has changed and morphed, but like I think MEEZAN is just like that older brother that puts you on stuff, you know. You I don't know, most of us or some of us have this experience when you grow up. There was that cool cousin, there was that cool brother that kind of introduces you to like a new things, you know. And that's what MEEZAN does. It's like it puts value on things that perhaps people may not know about, you know, and it kind of balances it out. And there's so many aspects to it, you know. Also me being from the DRC Congo, growing up in Germany, so I'm not really from there, I'm not really from here, so I'm like kind of in the middle, and I want to like balance that out, you know, that dichotomy. So that's sort of like what MEEZAN is all about. So it covers like spiritual and like I opened up myself to the old me, which was like the Dawood before me being like a Muslim, you know, and I merged those things together. Again, the MEEZAN thing. I took away obviously all the bad characteristics that I didn't like, but like the creative side, you know, and I was really trying to remove all the limitations. And I started to realize upon studying, because there was a time period I was like, I'm going to study a bit more European history. I started to realize that there were so many similarities between the Orient and the Occident, meaning like the European world. And I started to realize all these similarities, and that worked in my mind anyway, because I was doing MEEZAN. So that's where, for example, I think you're referring to the article "The Blind Leading the Blind," and it was by
yes, one of them.
Yeah, it's by one of the Dutch masters, and he paints that very famous painting. And I was like, so basically the inspiration to that article was that I was extremely pissed one day because there was fighting going on at Speaker's Corner, and I was so angry that I was like, we're basically being led by people that are blind themselves, you know. And I knew of that painting. So yeah, it's just me being inquisitive. It's a tribal thing. Like I've learned recently, I was in Germany 3 months ago, and my grandma, she was there, and I've learned so much from her that apparently my tribe is like that. My tribe is we're very like intellectual, like we pay a lot of attention into like learning, but then we also be very business minded at the same time, you know. And I was like, yo, that kind of makes sense, because that's how I am. And my granddad had like a very extensive library apparently, so he would read. He was very antisocial. I think I'm not like that, but he was very antisocial. He would just spend time with his books, and I think that got passed on in the DNA. But yeah, I think it just makes sense. Only makes sense as a Muslim who lives in the West, because you have so much to pick from, you know. You can read and like Iranian or Persian poetry and look at Shakespeare. And
back to our question of, you know, finding a community versus building it, what piece of advice could you give people who are freshly new to the faith, especially here in the UK? Now you can compare, you know, the experience, the struggle.
Yeah, I would say one thing: if you're new to the Deen, or if you're new to Islam, or if you're a creative, that is, because this happens sometimes as creative, you come or this is not just exclusive for new Muslims. It could even be a Muslim who grew up being heavily into comic and then he becomes like more serious about his religion, and then he abandons that. I would say, if you experience that very experience that I've just described, do not cut your friends off. Do not cut off yourself from the community that you're part of, even if it means that community isn't 100% aligned with your newfound values. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that new Muslims or Muslims do in general when they have a new way of looking at the world, is cut themselves entirely off from everything. And then you realize very quickly that, and this is down the line usually happens, why did I cut off this person? I could have still maintained some relationship with that person, and I would say, I mean, there's more extreme cases, of course, where it's very unhealthy for you to be around those people. Then don't be around those people. But if you know that you have friends and you have kind of a community, don't cut them off. Like, if they do things that you kind of disagree with, or the things that you don't align with, don't meet them when they do it. Meet them sort of in your space. And this is one of the things that I used to do with my friends who now are Muslims. These are like one of my closest friends who have Muslims, they have kids with Muslim names. One of them went to Umrah before I did, and I never cut them off because I couldn't. I was like, no, these are my friends, these are my people, and I would chill with them, and I would make it about Islam, and slowly, they kind of, this makes sense. This changed you. You're so much a better person. Let me look into this, and so that's one thing. Then the second thing I would say is, again, find a group that you think would appreciate your work. Absolutely. Don't try to squeeze yourself into rooms where you won't be appreciated. It's really that simple. I remember Tommy, our friend, Tommy Evans, who went... Hi, Tommy. He went exactly through the same experience as us. He was in a rap music industry, label boss, was making loads of money, was very successful. He becomes Muslim, he leaves everything behind, comes back sort of like as a poet, wants to do the exact same thing in a Muslim community, realizes that he's not appreciated, and sort of that he's just an extra when it comes to events. Now, Tommy, you go on to stage now. That type of, that was very humiliating. For an artist to experience something like that. And this is not even trying to stroke his ego or anything, but like, people need to understand that artists have particular sensibilities. I believe the Prophet Muhammad understood that, when he was using Hassan ibn Thabit for particular purposes. Artists are very sensitive. That's just how we are, and we have a place in society, and we have to be incorporated in that. And like, every civilization understood that. Every civilization understood that. In fact, most of the times what we know about previous civilization is due to the art. It's the artifacts, it's the sculptures, it's the poetry and those manuscripts, right? This is what we know about the world. It's because it's encapsulated in art. Now, go to a place where that is valued, and I think Tommy did the exact same thing. He just went back to his community, and now he's touring the world, he's releasing albums, it's just that simple. And the third thing I would say is that once you have identified that community, try to add value, try to be a bit more different, because remember, like, your perspective as a Muslim is always very unique. Trying to dig very deep into like yourself, and once you then start to release or bring out the art, and produce the art, people will really, really value you, because your perspective is just that different, and fourth, I would say, be brave and be patient. It's a very long way sometimes, we're kind of lucky because we live in England. You live not too far away from London. I live in London, so you meet so many interesting people. You could meet so many interesting people every week, so we're a bit spoiled when it comes to that. But like, as for someone who may not live as close, like look online, there's communities online, be active locally, with like, if it's photography, there's always these walks people do. There's always someone that is kind of close to what you want to do. even within the Muslims, you will find someone, you know, trying to like team up with him and trying to do things. I think one of the things that we were trying to do with the Muslims, and this is back in 2015 or 14, I believe, 15 or 16, is when we went to Rumi's Cave, and after Rumi's Cave, we went to that restaurant, and then there was like two opposing groups of Muslims who had like different views, and I think one of the things that never allowed us to work and just do the work was because of like on a theological ground, you know, because some people were convinced that, you know, music was this and music was that, whatever. But like, where has that brought us? Because some of the brothers who were like opposed to it are back in music now. So, do you know what I mean? I guess life is a journey, but yeah, I think religion is very important. And I think as long as the main things are covered and you kind of align with a person, and I would say even if it was a Shia, I'll be honest, that this might sound very controversial to some, but that's just me. I'm an artist. I look at the world slightly different, you know? So I had a friend of mine called Abu Salhuddin. He would attend Poetry Slams organized by Shia. But that was the only place that his art was valued, you know? And it was beautiful for him to go there as a Sunni, or, you know, for the lack of a better term, because he was able to represent, and the Shia in the crowd were able to look at someone as a black Caribbean man, very, very educated, who professes to be Sunni, who was quite welcoming to them, and vice versa, you know? I think creating like all these divisions, and like, I personally am not convinced by this idea of like, you have to disunite in order to unite. That's nonsense. Like, where has that ever worked? You know, that like conquerors speak like this, not like people who want to connect people to God. Now I organize my own events. You know, it's very important to create a culture, you know, produce intent, like intentionally. You really have to, there has to be an intent that, you know, I'm coming in here and I want to add something to it that you guys may not know. And this is like kind of the last example I wanted to give. And this is the, not the last event I did, but the event before that, which was a pink tank giveaway. Alcohol, especially in art galleries, plays a big role. Sometimes you go to like an opening and then there would be only alcohol. I'm like, so you have no water? No, just beer. I was like, ugh. Right? So I had my pink tank giveaway at Kunstraum. Shout out at the guys at Kunstraum. And I had organized drinks as well for the people to come, and I got these like champagne bottles with 0% alcohol. And there was this one guy, John, he came and he was like, oh, do you have anything to drink? I said, yeah, I have drinks. I was like, oh, I had so much alcohol yesterday, I don't know if I want to. I was like, no, it's all non-alcoholic. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, I showed him. He's like, he tasted it and he was like, wow, this is nice, right? And so this is the importance of bringing value and perspective. You know, remember, I'm the MEEZAN as the brand, the older brother that puts you on stuff that you've never heard of, right? We're creating in a whole way of existence that is different to what people are used to. You know, going to a screening and drinking non-alcoholic champagne. That sounds very interesting to me. You know, I want to know why they're drinking why they're not drinking alcohol. You know, what's that all about? And that's sort of like an example of creating value in a community or already existing community. And yeah, I mean, just be brave. You know, at one point when you've showed your face quite often and people know who you are and people kind of know what you do, then you can be like, hey guys, why don't you come to my event? I'm organizing this. And that's very important, especially in the social media era where a lot of the things happen online.
Thank you very much, Dawood, for sharing your experience and your piece of advice. So to everyone who's been watching, thank you very much for your attention. For any of Dawood's social, it will be displayed on the screen in the description. Please follow him, support him, and well, that's all for today. Thank you very much for your attention, and take care of yourselves.
Wassalam.